Hello. We come into life without a user manual. We're used to, with all of our devices, having instructions that tell us exactly how to use everything. And if we don't follow instructions well, we have a kid or somebody who can show us how to use our devices. The most complicated device that we come in with is our being, our holistic being that's comprised of many parts. And especially our minds. Our minds are extremely complex, and we don't ever learn how to use them. And when we get ill, we need to be able to make the best use of our minds so that we can take care of ourselves, and so that we're not making habitual mistakes, which are, instead of making us more well, are making us more sick. And that's really, really possible. If we don't know what we're doing wrong, we're going to keep doing it. And if we don't know better ways of doing things, we're stuck in this place where we can't make things better. So if we came with an instruction manual, we would know a lot more, but we don't, and we aren't taught that in school. We're just expected to do what we've always done, do what everybody else does, and succeed in life. Well, that's not the way it works. So I'll start with our minds. Very complicated. Mindset is something that is important to all of us. And in the fibromyalgia community, there is a perception when somebody introduces the topic of mindset that we're saying that fibromyalgia is in our heads. It's in your head. It's in my head. That couldn't be further from the truth. Fibromyalgia is in our bodies. It's in every fiber of our bodies. We feel it particularly strongly. And we have other symptoms that go with the pain. We have the fatigue, we have brain fog, we have so many symptoms, and they are definitely in our body. However, since we're made up of more components than just our body, it's important to know that other parts of us can be having a negative influence on our body, and also that if we use hacks to use our minds better, to use our emotions better, that we will be able to make changes in that and actually help ourselves. And that's what I would like to introduce today. Okay, I apologize for some of you. This is going to be very preliminary. For others of you, you may never have looked at life this way, because face it, in our day-to-day life, we're too busy dealing with what's right in front of us to stop and kind of look inside and see what's going on. So I'm going to take us inside to see what's going on. So our minds are different than our brains. We have brains, we have, and they are part of our head. They are part of the thing which, if this were in our head, it could be in our brain. And so what? Because our brain is also in our body, so that is physical health. It's not any kind of accusation if there's a problem in your brain, because here it is, very much part of your physical body. But the brain has multiple parts. Darwin, with evolution of the species, has taught us that. And the oldest part of our brain is the limbic system, also called the reptilian brain. And it alerts us to danger. It causes us to be able to run from a tiger if one happens to be chasing us. That doesn't happen very often these days. And so that limbic part of our brain isn't as useful as it was when we were living in caves with tigers nearby. Now that we're living in very separate houses that are, or houses, apartments, whatever, that are for the most part, comfortable and safe. We don't have those kinds of dangers jumping out at us. But with fibromyalgia, our limbic system is activated more than it ought to be. And so we have perhaps a state of constant vigilance. We're always kind of hyper aware. And that could be because of an injury. It could be because of old childhood wounding. It could be trauma of some kind. And so this hypervigilance is very draining to our energy. It's bad for our health generally. It gives us high blood pressure. It causes us to gain weight. It causes all kinds of problems. So that's the first part of the brain, okay? That's the limbic brain. And knowing that it's there, we can learn how to deal with it. Since panic and fear is one of the things most talked about these days in fibro groups, people are really uncomfortable. They're alone, they're isolated, they're in pain, they don't know what to do. Something happens, it frightens them, and they panic. And this panic is very, very real. And it comes from the limbic part of our brains. It causes adrenaline and cortisol to rush, and we're ready to run. We're ready to run for our lives. Except we have fibro, and many of us are very stiff and sore, and running is not an option. But physically, emotionally, our bodies are primed for that. And when you can't do it, when you can't release it, it's a very, very uncomfortable feeling. And so that's why panic can, regardless of the thoughts that are in your head when you're panicking, whatever you're panicking about, the body sensations are extremely uncomfortable. Our heart is pumping more. There's more blood rushing through, so that we're going to be able to do things, so that we can run, so that we are aware of our surroundings. So there is a very easy way to calm that down. And I'm going to interrupt what I was going to talk about by talking about this calming down, because it is so important these days. The best way to do it is to remember to breathe. Because when we're in panic, we literally forget to breathe. Our heart is pumping and we're sucking in air, but it's very shallow. And so we're sort of, and when we do that, we hyperventilate, and it can actually make the feelings of panic much, much worse. So what you want to do when you're in this kind of a very anxious state is to breathe as deeply, slowly, and calmly as possible. And the way to do that is to do it by counting. And so I'm going to tell you to breathe in for a count of 5, and that's a slow count of 5. Hold your breath for a count of 5, and then exhale for a count of 5. And I'm going to show you that. So it's in through the nose. And hold. And exhale. And you want to exhale completely, so that you're expelling all of the old used air out of your lungs. We want to get rid of the carbon dioxide and bring in oxygen, and have that oxygen pump through our bodies and get especially to our brain, so that it can calm us down. So again, it's very simple. Just breathe in for a count of 5 through your nose. Hold it once it's in. Let it fill your lungs completely, and then release it for a count of 5 until your lungs feel empty, and then repeat the process. And if you do that 5 or 6 times, you're going to find that you feel much, much better. And that is also something that you can use before bed. you don't need to do it quite as deeply, and you don't need to count if you don't want to, but just make conscious breaths in, then hold it and breathe it out. And if you repeat that several times when you're, in bed, settled, ready to go to sleep, it will probably put you to sleep with no other effort, because it is so calming. So give that a shot. And back to what I was talking about. Okay, our brain has many parts. We've got the early brain, and then we've got a more mature brain where we have the hypothalamus and a lot of centers that are controlling the function of the body, and that's all automatic. It's not things that we need to think about. We don't need to think about our heart beating. We don't need to think about whether we're breathing. We need to think about when we want to change our breathing, but we don't need to think about actually breathing. And things like our digestion and the many parts of keeping us alive, repairing our cells, all of those master controls are in our midbrain. And then the rational, analytic language part of our brain is the more developed cortex. It's the newer part of us. It's the part of us that's different from other animals. Okay, so those are the three parts of the brain. Okay, the mind, on the other hand, has two parts. It's the conscious brain, and that's what we're aware of what we're doing, and the unconscious. I think I said brain. I meant conscious mind, and the unconscious mind, where we're not aware of what is going on. So random thoughts can just kind of pop up into our awareness, and these come from the unconscious mind. And it can be something you watched on TV yesterday. It can be something we saw in the many media outlets that are available to us. It can be something that you heard. It can be something that is just totally imaginary. Just these thoughts just come. And they come at the rate of 20 to 50,000 a day. So there are lots of thoughts that are unconscious, just popping in and out. And we don't need to believe those thoughts. They're just unconscious things that are triggered. They just come up. And since they're unconscious, they may or may not be our own, because what we learn isn't our own. It comes from somebody else, and we should be giving it thought to determine whether or not this is something we believe, this is something that we want to go forward with or not. And in the case of thoughts that belong to somebody else, often they just come up and it's like, this is dangerous. And we believe it. And it can be swimming is dangerous. My dad was afraid of water, and since he didn't swim, I became afraid of water. And it was just something I believed. It was his, but it became mine, and I owned it. And I owned it until I was 40. I learned to swim when I was living in Hawaii, and that wasn't until I was 40. And so that's a thought that I just picked up as a kid, and I learned it, I kept it, I protected it, and it was not good for me, and it was hard work to get rid of, but it can be gotten rid of. And so these unconscious thoughts are thoughts that we need to learn to manage, and we don't know that if we don't know how our thought system, how our thinking system works. Some thoughts that come up are going to be positive, some are going to be negative. It'll depend on whose thoughts they are, where they came from, and just there's things that have more or less value. And what we need to know before we buy into our thoughts, our own thoughts, is whether they do still have value to us at this time. Do I want to fear water? Do I want to think that I will drown if I go in the water, if I put my face in the water? Well, clearly no, that makes no sense. And so I take action to change those thoughts, making them conscious. And we can do that with so many things, but we're not taught this, and we should be. And so when we get a dis-ease, an illness like fibromyalgia, it is often suggested to us that we see a psychiatrist, see a psychotherapist, work with a coach, whatever. The suggestion is that we need to not fix our minds, because our minds are perfectly fine. But what we need to do is learn how our minds work and how the internal peculiarities of our own mind are helping us and are hindering us, because they do both. And it's definitely to our advantage to learn how to capitalize on the amazing capacity of our minds and our brains. And we can do that by learning things like mindfulness, by learning things like meditation. There's so many ways that we can improve our lives by learning to adjust our mindset. The other thing that is in our unconscious mind, besides these thoughts that come up, are our memories, all of our memories. That's where we store, and this is our long-term storage. So all of our memories, all of our experiences, all of the good things that happen to us in life, all of the bad things that happen to us in life, they're all stored in us. They're in our subconscious. They're in our brains. They're in our bodies. There are physical sensations that are in our bodies because of things that happened to us years ago. I mean, think about ice cream or chocolate cake or something that you love. We love it because it was a childhood treat. Perhaps it was something we got when we were sick, or when we were good, or when we were something. These treats, the memory of that stays with us forever. And so we get this emotional rush when we consume this food. When you know that, you can work with it. When you don't know that, it can become a problem. It can also be something that you use. You know, if you know that sitting in the sun makes you feel happy, then sit in the sun when you don't feel happy. But we need to explore in order to know what causes which sensations in us, and how we can adjust how we're feeling, how we're experiencing life by accessing some of these old memories. So all of this is in our subconscious mind. We don't know this. We're not taught this. We're expected to cope. And the worst part of this is that we expect ourselves to cope. We expect ourselves to know how we work when we have never been taught how we work. And we weren't taught how we work because the people who came before us didn't know. So the best we can do is learn the new things that are available to us, to maximize what's problematic in our systems that are causing us to feel dis-ease, and maximize what's in us that we can feel better. And there is so very, very much that we can do to feel better. And I know that when you're given a diagnosis of fibromyalgia, it doesn't feel like we have control. It doesn't feel like there is anything that we can do to feel better. And I know that because I was there. When I first got sick with fibro, I was very sick, and it started with pain, and then there was some trauma, and then so there was an emotional crash that was added onto the pain, and so things started piling up, and I just reached a breaking point. And I think that happens for a lot of us. We just get to the point where, you just can't take anymore and the body just shuts down in pain. And we get, very emotional in a very negative way. For me, it was depression and anxiety. And it was really intense and I couldn't sleep at all. And if someone had told me then, what it's taken me, 20 plus years to figure out, my life could have been very, very different. But I only learned bits, and I didn't, totally accept, believe, receive, and adopt everything that I learned because I wasn't ready for it. So it takes... You will take and learn what you're ready for as you are ready for it, and that's just fine. You can't expect yourself to take in 100% of the benefit of everything that I say the first time you hear it, because much of it might be foreign to you, and because it's a process. And so learning is a process. The way our bodies and minds work is a process, and we need to learn it. We need to see how it plays out in us, see how things that are in our mind may be causing us not to sleep, how memories that are coming up, feelings that are coming up, anxiety that's coming up is preventing us from being able to relax and sleep, how those anxieties and those feelings may be coming up in sensations of pain, which are really cries for help, asking for relief, asking to be healed. We have so much of us because we have worked hard, we have tried hard, we have had bad things happen to us, all of us. That's human nature. This all happens. And so there's damages all through us. And if we're not fixing those damages as they go along, then it will happen that we crash. And our way of crashing happened to have been fibromyalgia. And I have been blessed to be able to get myself out of it. I mean, I still have it. I can still, if I don't do what I know I need to do, then I know I will get stiff. I know I will, the pain will come back. The anxiety will come back. And you can probably tell from talking to me that I can be kind of anxious. And, sitting in front of the camera, talking to people who I can't see is not... a natural skill for me. It's if you were there in front of me, I could talk to you about these things very easily, but I do find it hard to talk to a little camera. But all of us have these issues. All of us have all of these little pains in us, and they accumulate. And some of us are better at releasing them. Some of us are in better environments. We may be surrounded with more love. We may eat better foods. We may have better weather. We may have more abundance. There are so many differences that can happen between individuals. Also with fibromyalgia, it's not something that is the only thing that we may be dealing with. Many people with fibromyalgia have many other conditions. One of the other things that I have is hypertension. I also have PTSD. And so these things, they're not part of the fibromyalgia, but they go along with it, and so they need to be managed with it. And each of you will have, varying components that are coming with this, or are part of it, or are they're just symptoms. And what we need to do is just learn to accept whatever is in our bodies and just calmly figure out what to do to make it better. The fact is medicine doesn't have a cure for this, so they can't fix it. There's no pill that we can take that's going to make this magically go away. But there are things that we can do. There are things that we can learn that will make this ever so much easier to deal with. And I'm not going to be able to, tell you everything I've learned in 20 years with free videos while COVID is keeping us all in our homes. But what I will do is share as much as I can so that you can get a sense of what you can learn, to get a sense of control. The fact is, fibromyalgia has not taken our control away from us. It has not taken our power from us. But much of the negativity around fibromyalgia makes us believe that. The fact that we think we have something that can't be cured, that can't be fixed, that we are stuck with for the rest of our lives is very scary. But that's not a truth. But if you believe it, it will become your truth. When I thought there was nothing I could do, there was nothing any doctor could do, there was nothing anybody could do, I just had this, I gave up and I just had this. And I suffered with it and was work disabled for 20 years. I hope I will be able to talk with you and show you that actually we can take control back. We can learn to deal with the issues that come up as they come up, and we can learn to make this better. It's a little hard to convey this without any one-to-one interaction, so we'll do some Facebook Lives with this so we can have discussion about it too, and perhaps take this onto Zoom. But for now, this is a start. I want to talk to you about many ways that we can look at fibromyalgia differently than just looking at it as a diagnosis that we are stuck with, that is totally misunderstood, that is stigmatized, invisible, that's got all kinds of things that are anything but positive going for it. But the fact is, it is manageable. It is entirely possible for us to change anything in our lives. We can become wealthy. We can become married, divorced. We can have kids. We can not have kids. We can have a wonderful career. We can have a simple menial job that just brings in some bucks. And these are choices we make. And there are so many choices that we make in life, and there are so many choices that we can make about fibromyalgia. We can take our lives back with fibromyalgia. I have. Mine's not perfect yet. I've got a lot of financial loss from not working for 20 years that I need to eventually build on, because now here I am in retirement with very limited income. But that's not something that I'm going to accept as being stuck with. I have a lot of good information, and I do intend to use that. I do intend to do more coaching. I intend to do more courses. I'm going to have digital courses so that it's more affordable ways for people with fibromyalgia to learn what I have to teach. And so I'm working on lesson plans and classes and videos, and I'll be doing videos and audios and transcripts and all of that stuff. But for now, what I want to do is just talk to everybody and say, we don't need to accept this. We don't need to give up. We don't need to feel like we're beaten. We're not beaten. Another thing that I think is really important with fibromyalgia is to accept it, but not give in to it. It's here. It's a fact of our life. The earth is round. That's a fact of life. We don't fight that the earth is round. We do fight our fibromyalgia. And fighting fibromyalgia is just putting more energy and attention to it, and it tends to make symptoms worse. So what I'm going to be suggesting is an alternate approach to fighting it. It's more of an accepting it and managing it and making it behave according to our rules. We will listen to what it has to teach us, and it has a lot to teach us because we have ignored certain things that could have made our experience of life better. And because we've ignored them, we have fibro as a consequence. And these are, for me, these are things that were insults to my soul. And if you put up with enough insults to your soul, it's damaging. And so I'm broken, I'm damaged. But I have done a lot of work to fix what's broken. And the Japanese, when a plate breaks, a nice plate, they don't just toss it out. They have it fixed and they fill it with gold. And I feel like that's a bit of what I've done with myself. I've taken those breaks and I've examined them, and I put myself back together, and I'm put back together with gold. And we're going to put you back together with gold. You're going to put you back together with gold. And you're going to feel better, and you're going to feel your value. And you're not going to feel limp and tired and exhausted and beat up and run down and like you need to fight this illness. It's not a them and an us. We're whole beings, and we're whole beings who happen to be with fibro. So we will figure out how to manage that and to still make us the best that we can be, living the best lives that we can live. And that's what I hope to be giving you over the next few weeks as we all sit indoors alone together while this COVID-19 crisis is going on all around us. And what we could do is stay home, to stay safe, eat well, get some sunlight, get some movement, get lots of sleep, and let's work on this. Let's work on getting you better. Thanks so much. I hope to see you frequently. Bye-bye.